Hey, welcome everybody. Dylan over here at the Caden Academy, and thank you so much for joining me. And thank you to all the new subscribers to the channel. So, today I wanted to shoot a video on a topic that I have been thinking about a lot lately, and it pertains to how do we as human beings begin to better manage our emotions and why that's important. So, if you really stop and think about it, I'm going to treat a series of these videos almost like a lecture. So, I'll kind of open them up like I'm doing now and discuss them a little bit. But I've got a whole series of notes that I've been writing down for the last few weeks on this. And so, in a moment, I'm going to read them for you. And all you need to do is just relax and listen to it. But it's an interesting topic because if you think about our society today, and I'll get into this in the video as well, we're taught so many things, but primarily we're taught how to be a productive member of really this capitalistic driven society. But what you're very rarely taught in schools and in a lot of families and in a lot of cultures, especially in the United States and even throughout the world, is how to manage our emotions. And this video I actually titled The Forgotten Art of Emotional Mastery. And why is that important? Because if you think about a lot of the challenges, let's just start even within our own lives, a lot of the conflicts or challenges in our own lives, a lot of the conflicts and challenges around the world, challenges with our spouse, challenges with our children's, our sons, our daughters, people in our community, whatever it might be. And I'm not speaking all in a negative. I don't mean to sound like a negative context, like all emotions are bad, because of course there's plenty of good emotions. There's joy, there's love, there's peace, there's all of these things, and there's all of these good sides to this biology and how we respond to things. But when you look at, just generally speaking, you take a step back from the world as a whole and you look at how destructive uncontrolled emotions can be. Think about the root behind every war. Think about all the global conflicts that are going on right now. Um, are any of those emotional based? Yeah, there's a big emotional impact on a lot of those. Think about your own internal relationships. Think about your workplace. If there's somebody you don't like, somebody you have a conflict with, customers, clients. Think about your own family, your spouse, your husband, your wife, your children, you name it. And why are these things not taught? Why are we not taught for most people? Why do we not grow up? Why are we not taught in our schools and our colleges and our universities? Why are we not taught as a society in whole? We learn math, we learn algebra, we learn science, we learn history, we learn math, we learn finance, you name it. But very seldom is it taught how to manage these emotions. And then I wonder what the world would be like if we all learned to sit and process our emotions before we respond and react, to not let emotions guide us and lead us, especially in times of conflict, but instead to let logic and reason, think about road rage, for example. You're in a car driving down the road and there's so many people that get on your rear end and are mad because you're not going 15 miles over the speed limit. Or maybe you're actually one of those people. You're mad because somebody's driving the speed limit, right? And think about all the chaos that creates just because you have this emotional outburst. You want to be somewhere, you want to go somewhere, but you're not able to process it. That's just, one of millions of examples, right? And I talk about that a lot because I live in northern Michigan, and I'm the old lady that drives down the road going the speed limit or below. So I got a lot of people that ride my rear end. But it's just simple examples like that. And the good news is I want to get into this script because I really go into detail. I put a lot of thought into this. But you really think about, we're only one or two generations away. If we can, as a culture, as a society, and it starts with us individually, right? So they always say if you want a clean neighborhood, you start with sweeping your own front porch. And so all we can do is learn to be in a good example ourselves, learn how to process and control our own emotions, how to deal with them, how to sit with them, how to give it time before you react. Um, but imagine if we could adapt that as a culture, we could adapt that as a society. It's fascinating to imagine what a different world we would all be living in if we were taught emotional management, emotional processing, and led with logic and reasoning and fairness instead of emotional outburst. And of course, there's good sides to emotions as well, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and get into this video. And like I said, I've kind of started like a lecture series here, and I've got one video up already. But I'm just gonna read it to you and comment below if there's something that resonates with you. Maybe there's an emotion that you're having a difficult time dealing with. I know for me, for most of my adolescent years, it was anxiety, but also anger as well. And so it took me a long time to get out of those habits and rewire the brain and rewire my emotional response. But comment below if there's an emotion that you're struggling with. Comment below, and maybe I can give you some pointers or some tips how to deal with it. I'm going to also give you some pointers and tips in this lecture as well. And if you've made it this far and you're not already in our Inner Edge community, I am trying to, and eventually will, build and it's growing, but I'm building a community here on Facebook. It's completely free right now. That could change down the road. I don't know. But it's called the Inner Edge Community, and it's a place to come and get help, whether it's in your business or your personal life. We call it Aligned Productivity. Sorry, my internet dropped on me, so I have to resplice this back in. But we call it Aligned Productivity, and it stands for clarity, execution, alignment, and energy. And so we don't just discuss for small business owners. Um, of course, there's productivity, how to increase your productivity, which naturally generally leads to increased revenue, increased profits as well. But we also talk how to do it from a position of not forcing anything, but getting in alignment and allowing things to come to us and not having the normal stresses that so many people and so many business owners face. But you don't have to be a business owner to join us in the Inner Edge community. A lot of what we talk about are mindset tips and practices and discussions on spirituality and things like that as well too. So all that to say, if you haven't already, it's completely free. I'm in there every week. Eventually, I would like to be hosting weekly group coaching calls with people, but we've got to grow the group. We've got to get more and more participation, and then I want to transform it into weekly coaching calls as well. So be part of that group, be part of that movement. I'm there to help you if you've got questions, challenges in your personal life, things like emotions that you're trying to process or overcome. That is a great place and a great community to join, and there will be a link in the description, but you can also go to cadenacademy.com and join. And while you're there, one last thing I want to say is to also join our newsletter, because you're going to get, right now it's growing every Friday, but you're going to get almost 200 days of awesome content every 5 to 7 days. It's not selling you on anything. It's productivity content, it's mindset content, it's things to think about like this video as well. And so that's a great free resource. And then you get a whole bunch of downloads as well too for joining the newsletter. So do those two things. We're going to jump into my thoughts on how do we process and begin to process our emotions. And again, it starts with sweeping your own front porch. So comment below, share your thoughts, share your challenges, share your breakthroughs. I'd love to hear from you. I do watch them, I do read them, and hopefully you enjoy. Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me. So I'm going to just read some notes that I wrote down on this topic of being able to better deal with our emotions. And of course, it starts with us individually, but imagine a society in which this is a regular thing that we learn to do and process, and where would we be as a world? It's just interesting to think about. But today I want to explore something that really is as old as humanity itself, and yet strangely absent from our modern curriculum. And that is the art of emotional control. Now, I don't mean suppression, denial, or numbness. I mean mastery. The kind of quiet strength that sees emotion clearly, honors it, and chooses not to be ruled by it. Because in truth, much of the suffering we experience in our personal lives and the violence and discord and chaos that we see in the world is not caused by evil intent, but by uncontrolled emotions. Think about that for a moment. Anger, resentment, jealousy, fear, insecurity, ego, pride. These are not inherently bad in and of themselves. They are part of the human toolkit, but when they go unexamined, they become destructive, like a fire without a container. As Ram Dass once said, you can do it like it's a great weight on you, or you can do it like it's part of the dance. Emotion becomes suffering, not because it exists, but because we resist it, we cling to it, or become it. We live in a society that teaches us how to read, how to write, how to calculate, how to produce, but rarely, if ever, are we taught how to feel. Children go through 13 plus years of schooling, yet not once are they handed the framework for managing grief, handling anger, observing fear, or transforming sadness. We are trained to succeed externally, but remain largely illiterate when it comes to our inner world. And so we grow up believing that emotions are either weakness, especially for men. You know, I can speak to men, maybe not women, but especially for men. That emotions are to be hidden or weapons to be used. When somebody's attacking us or we feel attacked, we lash out with emotions. We let them drive our decisions and so many things. Did you have any instances this week where your emotions led your decisions? They led your reactions? Take a moment and think about that. And did they lead them in a positive way? We wrap identity around reactivity. We confuse impulse for truth. And as a culture, we've become emotionally reactive. And I think a lot of times, as good as modern technology is and things like social media, but oftentimes they lead to this emotional overreactivity. And the price we pay as a society is enormous. But why is this absent? Why have we as a species placed so little emphasis on the inner landscape? Alan Watts might say that our modern systems reflect a kind of collective forgetfulness, a belief that we are separate from the natural world, separate from spirit, separate from God, separate from ourselves. We have elevated intellect, productivity, and rationality to the exclusion of all else, and yet what makes us human is not just our capacity to reason, but our capacity to feel. That's the missing component in our society today. Emotions are not the enemy. They are the messengers. They show us where are our wounds. They tell us what matters to us. But they're not always right. And they're not always wise. A lot of times emotions are there to keep us, this biological body, alive. We don't really live, for many of us, in a world where we need to be led by our emotions any longer. The fight or flight response. And herein lies the paradox. To control emotion, we must first learn to let it speak. Most of us are not aware that our emotions are shaped not only by the present moment, but by years of conditioning, generational patterns, and unconscious belief systems. An emotion arises and we take it at face value, but the wise one pauses, observes, peers beneath the surface of that emotion. To quote Ram Dass again, the game is not about becoming somebody, It's about becoming nobody. The moment we stop identifying with every passing wave of emotion, we find the stillness that exists underneath it all. That stillness is awareness itself. We must learn to pause, to ask, is this reaction rooted in truth, or is it simply rooted in habit? Is this anger mine, or is it inherited from a story I've never questioned? Am I reacting or responding? Because mastery begins with awareness, not suppression, not judgment, but observation, stillness, presence. Let's return to the mundane, because true spirituality shows up in ordinary moments. Let's look at a few examples. You get an angry email. Your instinct is to defend or attack. But imagine if instead of hitting reply, you stood up, walked away, and simply breathed. Imagine seeing the anger as a flare, a temporary burst, a storm cloud that only lasts if you chase it. Let's look at another scenario, the envy scroll. You see a friend succeeding on social media. Jealousy arises. But instead of judging it, what if you said, "Thank you, emotion, for showing me a desire I've buried." You turn envy into a compass. Let's look at one more, the heated argument. You're in a conflict with your partner, and yet, what if in the middle of rising tension you asked, is love more important than being right? Imagine choosing love over the need to win, the need to be right. Imagine giving up having to be right. Imagine giving up so many of our opinions. Why? Why do we need to have that in that scenario? These are not techniques, they're shifts in being. So here's some practices for emotional mastery. I'm going to expand on them. But these are some of the things that have helped me and some of my clients as well learn to process and better sit with our emotions. And so I'm just going to list a few of them. The first is to become the observer. So you learn this in mindfulness. They call it a lot in meditation. You can learn this in kind of some of the Buddhist traditions as well. But you just learn to just sit and become the observer of your emotions. Watch your emotional state like a cloud in the sky. You don't need to cling to it. You don't need to fight with it. Just let it be and let it drift. The emotions always pass. And so sometimes it's a good reminder to just breathe. And like I say to myself, wow, that's interesting. I just have this intense feeling of anger right now. I'm going to sit with it. I'm not going to react to it. I'm not going to have an outburst. Or maybe it's just an emotion of depression that just comes out of the blue, or anxiety that comes out of the blue. Just learn to sit with it, say that's curious, and to allow it to simply pass. And it will always pass. Sometimes it passes in minutes, sometimes it passes in hours, or sometimes it passes in days. Another thing that I like to do that's very helpful is I just have a policy. I typically wait 24 hours. You know, I've been in business for 20 years, and so I've had all types of interactions through emails and with clients and with customers, and some of them not so nice. And in the past, I would fire back an emotional reply. But nowadays, I just sit with it. And if there's something that really has bothered me, I allow 24 hours to pass. There's no need, though our society today has created this hyper reactive culture, but you don't have to follow those rules. There's no need for you to reply to an email or a text message or a comment or whatever it is that's got you worked up immediately. Allow it to pass, because usually the next day you're going to be approaching it not from an emotional standpoint, but from a logical standpoint or a rational standpoint, and you're going to respond a lot differently. And so a general rule of thumb is if you just, something's really got you going, just give it 24 hours. It will pass and you'll feel a lot different about it, almost always. Learning to give up your opinions. You know, I had a coach Matthew Ferry. I want to give him credit. One of his things that he taught most often was going on a opinion diet. And so if you think about all of these opinions we have, from a society standpoint, it's entertaining. You have discussions, you have opinions. We're not saying you shouldn't have opinions, but a lot of our opinions are the root of our suffering as well. The ego feeds on certainty. Emotional mastery often begins with humility. And so, like Matthew Ferry used to say to me, go on an opinion diet. You don't have to always be right. You don't always have to have an opinion. You don't always have to have an answer. And a lot of times it's our opinions about how things should be, about how I should be treated, about how society should operate, the government should operate, people driving on the road should operate. Oh, geez, that person should hold the door open for me. No, these are all opinions and things that we're holding people accountable to for promises that they never made. This is what Matthew Ferry used to teach me for so long. And so a tool is just go on an opinion diet for a little time and see how you feel. A big one that helps me a lot, especially when it comes to a relationship, whether it be business or a personal or a spouse, is just you don't always have to be right. So give up the need to be right. Sometimes the best move is to not create more argument, to not create more chaos, to not more create destruction. Just say, you're right. Whether they're right or not, right? It doesn't matter. But to utilize this as a very effective tool and to not have to be right. Let the other person be right. And they could be, usually arguments are there because you believe you're right and they believe they're right and you argue about it to infinity and beyond. Just let the other person be right. And bam, there's no more resistance. It's over. It's done. So that is a very powerful tool and I use it a lot. There's many ways you can use that. Breathing techniques are very helpful. So if you're learning to process your emotions, I use a technique called the 7-11 technique. And it's just taking some time to breathe. And there's all types of breath work. You can get on YouTube and just type in relaxation breath work. There's breath work to induce states of DMT and all types of stuff. It runs the gambit. But very simple technique is called the 7-11 technique. And that's where you inhale very slowly for 7 seconds, short pause at the top of it, and then you exhale for 11 seconds. And this activates the parasympathetic, and I can't say the word, but parasympathetic, if that's how you say it, nervous system, which is basically just telling your body you're safe. You're not going to be eaten by a lion or a tiger. You're not in danger. And the fight or flight response mechanism can calm down, right? And so breathing in for 7, short pause, and exhaling for 11. And just do that a few times. 5 to 10 times is more than enough to get your body to just relax and chill out as you're processing whatever emotion you're processing. Another tool that I want to give Matthew Ferry credit for is he teaches often in his training, recontextualization. And this is a tool that is extremely helpful. And what that really means is the cool thing about every situation is you can simply change your definition of it. You can recontextualize it. You can ask yourself, is this happening to me or for me? What is in this lesson? What is in this moment? Instead of looking at a situation and your initial reaction might be, this is bad or this is a negative, flip the story around. Change the story around into something positive, to something empowering, to something that makes you feel good instead of bad. And like Matthew used to tell me, and so many other teachers used to tell me, that everything is really a story that you've made up. And so if you're making up a story that makes you feel bad, you might as well make up a story that makes you feel good. And so the power of recontextualizing it, which really is just the power of creating a more positive, uplifting story about what it is that you're feeling bad about or it's got you emotionally worked up. It's very powerful stuff. And so just recontextualize it. Look at it in a different way. And a lot of times I'll be faced with a scenario and I'll write down how I'm currently thinking about it. And then I'll write down a different, more positive way, a more uplifting way to think about it, and I'll repeat that to myself over and over and over, almost like an affirmation. Until my emotions change about it. And then one thing to keep in mind is just see it for what it is. It's really biology at the end of the day. These bodies were designed to keep us alive, and they do a very good job at that. We were built with this fight or flight, this survival reflex, not so much a moral compass. But for the vast majority of us in society today, not everybody, because there's really challenging places around the world, but for the most part, many of us are not in true survival situations. The body does a great job, but it hasn't yet caught up to modern society. And so when somebody is experiencing road rage, or you have an argument in your relationship or at work or with a customer, your body doesn't know the difference. It's reacting to try to keep you alive. So your heart rate gets risen, functions start to shut down, just the essentials start to go. If you really study it on a biological level, it's your body doing what it's programmed to do. Meaning, listen, step aside. I'm going to take over, no thinking involved, and we're going to keep you alive. But 99.9% of the circumstances that we emotionally get worked up about today are not situations where you're in a life or death situation. And God forbid you're ever in that situation, allow the body to take over and do its job. But as we go through society and we go through business and we go through our everyday lives, it's imperative today, as we continue to evolve our mindset and our consciousness and how we interact in this world, that we learn to say to the body, you're okay. You're not in a life or death situation. It's okay. I've got you. And this is the power of the mind, letting the mind lead instead of the biological reactions lead, letting the wise person inside of you lead. So seeing it for what it is. It's the biology. Your body is doing what it's designed to do. It's going to react. It's going to get fired up. But it's being able to pause for a moment and get control of that and have that higher self take over and say, it's okay, body. We're not fighting a lion. We're not fighting a tiger. We're not in a dangerous situation. And let logic and wisdom take over. Another powerful tool is meditation. So just sitting, meditating, calming the mind, allowing it to pass. If you followed me for any time, you know that imagination is huge, the power of imagination. And if you haven't read the book already, I have a book on Amazon called called Imagination Creates Reality. Just search for Dylan Borland on Amazon. And it's amazing, right? What our imagination's capable of. But I like to use my imagination to repaint the story in my mind. If you can suffer in your imagination, you can also heal in your imagination. You can also have joy in your imagination. And so many times throughout the day, if I've had a negative experience or bad experience, or I've got memories of my past that I'm not really fond of, or experiences that were not great experiences, I use my imagination to reimagine them and to relive them in the way that I want to relive them. And once you get really good at that, it's really fun to do. So imagine you just had an argument with your spouse or a friend or a family member, and you're not feeling good and you lay down and you go to bed. Well, in your mind, reimagine what had just transpired into a positive one. So there's endless ways you can do this. It's, I remember recently I had a backpacking trip a few years ago that wasn't a pleasant experience. I was not well prepared. The weather was not good. It just wasn't. But every time I think about that experience, it brought a negative emotion. I said, this was such a beautiful place to be. I don't want to continue to hold on to that negative emotion. Let me reimagine in my mind this backpacking experience as a positive one. The weather was good. I was smiling. I was having the time of my life, which I was, by the way. But, just using these situations at any point in time, you can go back, close your eyes, and use the power of your imagination to repaint the story. And it's a powerful tool. Another powerful tool is forgiveness and gratitude. I literally have tattooed on my arm the word gratitude. Gratitude is one of the most powerful things you can possibly do to change your emotional state. Forgiving somebody, yes, it's extremely difficult, especially depending on your circumstances. And I've been in some circumstances where I just thought I could never forgive a person for these things. But you're only hurting yourself. It's like clinging onto a rope that's covered in glass shards. And the tighter you squeeze and the harder you hold and the harder you cling, the more damage you're doing to yourself. And so the simplest thing to do is just open your hands and let go. To forgive. So much of religious context, in particular scripture, you name it, talks about the power of forgiveness. We need to forgive, and it's really for our own emotional well-being. And the power of gratitude, sitting down every night, every day. Thank you God, thank you universe, thank you spirit, thank you self, whatever it is that you want to call it. Thank you for the blessings in my life. Thank you for the fact that I woke up this morning and I was in a warm home. Thank you for the fact that I woke up and I have clean running water on demand, that I have heat, that I have some food, that I have a job, that I have some savings, that I have a vehicle that can get me from here to there. I don't have to ride a bike. I don't have to ride a scooter. I don't have to call an Uber. Just being grateful every day, all day for the blessings that are in your life. I do a lot of traveling around the world, and if people are living in tough conditions. And I always tell people, if you want to experience gratitude, get on a plane and go to Africa, get on a plane and go to Vietnam, get on a plane and go, somewhere in the Middle East, go anywhere in the world and see the conditions in which people are living, and then come back home. If you want to have the most profound gratitude experience you can have. International travel will give you a lot of gratitude, but it's a very powerful thing. Just practice it every day. Thank you for this meal. Thank you for the little bit of savings I have, or the lot of bit of savings that I have. Thank you for getting me through each day. Thank you to your body, my heart, my lungs, my organs, my legs, my eyes, everything for still working and keeping me alive and keeping me going. There's just so much to be grateful for. And practice it every day. Seek peace in that power. The one who disarms, be the one who disarms, not the one who escalates. In this, you become the alchemist. So I mentioned earlier in this video, imagining a new world that we may only be a few generations away from change, 1 or 2 generations away. If we all learn to manage our emotions properly, and we raised our children in such a way, or we adjusted our schools in such a way where we're not just taught how to be productive members of this capitalistic society, but we're taught how to process and manage our emotions in a responsible way, where would we be? Let us imagine a world where emotional mastery is not rare, but common. Right now, it's the opposite. Where children are taught to name their feelings, not suppress them. Where classrooms make space for silence, for breath, for empathy. Where teachers are not just instructors, but guides of inner life. And we're not talking about pushing religion on anybody. That's not what we're talking about here. But we're talking about deep inner work that is often associated with religion in some fashion. But being able to just sit and process your emotions. Imagine a workplace where conflict isn't escalated, but examined. Where leaders of our world model pause and reflection, not reaction and ego. How many leaders out there are just reacting from ego and emotional overload? Most. Imagine neighborhoods where community members sit together to process grief or tension, not cast blame or demand conformity. Imagine political leaders who seek unity, not through domination, but through wisdom. Imagine a society where it's normal to take a breath before speaking, to ask, where is this coming from before responding, to value peace over pride. This is not idealism. This is a vision of maturity, emotional maturity, of conscious evolution. And it starts with each of us. It starts with you. If you want to have a clean neighborhood, you start with your own front porch. That's all we can do. We can't change other people. We can't expect other people to act in this way. But if we all took it upon ourselves to learn how to manage our emotions, if we all took it upon ourselves to focus on ourselves and our own front porch, then one by one, in a generation, we're looking at an entirely different world, an entirely different experience. And it starts with the moment you decide to respond rather than react, to observe rather than absorb, to love rather than to win. I, like you, am still learning this every day. I still catch myself clinging to emotions, reacting instead of pausing, needing to win instead of listen. But I return. Time and time again, I return. This is not about perfection, it's about practice. The more we develop emotional mastery, the more peace we experience. Not because the world gets easier, but because we become stronger, steadier, and wiser within it. The transformation of society begins with the transformation of the individual. And that begins with awareness. Thank you all so much for joining me in this reflection. Until next time, check us out at the Caden Academy, and we'll talk to you all soon.